Hi, and welcome to Maths Made Easy. Today we're going to learn a great simple method for how to add fractions. First, let's start off with what the different bits of a fraction are called. So, you know a fraction is something of the form of one number with a line and another number below, and we call this top number the numerator and the bottom number the denominator. So from now on, I'll call the top number the numerator and the bottom number the denominator when we're talking about adding the different bits of the fractions. Okay, now let's start actually adding them. So, imagine we have two fractions like this. 3 over 7 and 2 over 7. Now it turns out when you have two denominators that are exactly the same number, so here we've got 7, then it will stay the same, okay? So we can keep our 7. And now for the top, when you have two denominators the same, all you have to do is just add these top numbers together. So here we'll get 3 plus 2 on the top, which will give us 5. So that's our first rule. When you have the same denominator, you just add the top things instead. We could write that out in fancy maths terms like this. So two things where they've got the same denominator but different numerators become a fraction with still the same denominator, and you just add the numerators together. This will be our first rule. Excuse me. So let's see another example of that. Let's take this time 1 over 8 and 2 over 8. So, just like we saw above, because they have the same denominator, it makes it nice and easy. We draw a line and we've got our denominator staying the same, and on the top we just add the top numbers. So that's 2 plus 1, we get 3. Okay, now let's try something else. So what if we've got different denominators? Let's say we want to add 1 over 3 and 1 over 6. Now, here's the thing. We know how to add if they've got the same denominator, so what we want to do is try and get them to have the same denominator. So for instance here, we can see that this denominator, the 6, is bigger than the 3, so maybe we can do something to the 3 to make it into a 6. We know that to go from a 3 to a 6, we multiply by 2. So what we do is we take this whole fraction and we multiply it by 2, so that means we multiply the top by 2, so on the top we'll get 1 times 2, that'll be 2. And on the bottom, we get 3 times 2, that'll be 6. And our second fraction is the same, we've not done anything to it. Now, just like we saw above, we have two fractions with the same denominator, so we can add them just like before. So that means we'll get the 2 and the 1 added together to make us a 3. Okay, so there's the method there. When you have two denominators that are different, you want to get them to be the same, and then we can apply our first rule. So let's have another example. So, 1 over 12 plus 2 over 4. We need to get them to be the same. Now, we can't necessarily take the 12 to the 4 because that would be going smaller and we can't divide that 1 by anything. So we've got to go from the 4 up to the 12. Now, let's see how to do that. So, we can go from a 4 to a 12 by multiplying by 3. So our first fraction is going to stay the same, we're not doing anything to that. And the second fraction, we're multiplying by 3. So, let's actually multiply that by 3. Now you know that 2 times 3 is 6. And 4 times 3 is 12. So there we go. We've got two denominators that are now the same. So what we can actually do is just add these just like before. So 1 over 12 and 6 over 12, they've got the same denominator, so that'll stay the same. And then we just add the top numbers, the 1 and 6, add together to make the 7. Now what if we can't just take one number to the other number straight away? So let's have an example here. Let's say we want to add 1 over 3 and 2 over 4. Now, there's nothing we can multiply the 3 by to get to the 4, and there's nothing we can multiply the 4 by to get to the 3, so what do? We have to find a number that they can both go to. So in this case, let's have a think. So we might think about our 3 times table and think 3, 6, 9, none of those numbers we can get to from 4. 3, 6, 9, 12. Now that 12 is also 3 times 4. So we can get to that number from both of these numbers. So that means we want to make our new denominator as 12, and we'll end up with something over 12. Now let's see how we actually change these to be over 12. Well, to go from 3 to 12, we have to multiply by 4. So that means we have to multiply this fraction by 4. So we'll get 1 times 4 on the top, and 3 times 4 on the bottom. Now this second fraction, we can get to 12 as we planned, but we don't multiply by 4, otherwise we'd get to 16. Instead we have to multiply by 3, because 4 times 3 is 12. So here, we've multiplied the bottom by 3, and of course we have to do the same to the top. Now we've got two things over the same denominator, and just like before, when you have two things over the same denominator, you can just add those top numbers together. So that's 6 plus 4 gives us 10. Okay, nice. Let's see one more example. So let's do 1 over 2 plus 1 over 3. Now pause the video, give it a try, unpause it, and I'll show you the solution. Okay, so we need to add 1 over 2 and 1 over 3. But you see, just like above, we can't go from the 2 to the 3, and we can't go from the 3 to the 2, so we have to go to a bigger number. And the number that we can get to from both of them is 6, right? Because 2 times 3 is 6, and 3 times 2 is 6. Okay, so now let's change our fractions to b over 6. So here, to go from 2 to 6, we have to multiply by 3. So that means we have to multiply the whole fraction by 3. So that means on the top we'll get 1 times 3, and that'll be 3, and on the bottom we'll get our 2 times 3, that'll be our 6, just like we need. Because remember, throughout this whole thing we're trying to get them to have the same denominator so that we can add them really simply. Now, what about the second one? To go from a 3 to a 6, we multiply by 2, so that means we have to multiply the whole fraction by 2. So 1 times 2 is 2, and 3 times 2 is 6. And now, just like before, we have two fractions added with the same denominator, so we can just add the numerators and we'll be done. So, the denominator stays the same, and 3 plus 2 is 5. And that is how you add fractions. Thank you.